Okay, everyone. So thank you very much for joining us. I can see some people are still coming in, so I'm going to give it another minute. Feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourself and where you are. See if we can make some connections this evening. Okay. A few more people coming in. Okay. Wolverhampton. Stevenage. Wow, from all over. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to make a start, and hope that people sort of filter in as we go through. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then we can begin. Okay, I think we'll make a start and people can trickle in. So I suppose the first thing to do is introduce myself. Thank you very much for joining Women Ed and the Chartered College of Teaching for our Inspiring Early Career Teachers event. We are based in the North East, but a lot of the advice and tips you'll be given this evening, hopefully we'll be able to translate all over the country, hopefully all over the world. So we have a hashtag Women Ed. If you are on Twitter, please do make sure that you are tweeting using that. You can also tweet using the hashtag Inspiring Early Career Teachers. And don't forget to tag in at WomenEdNE. So we've got a few people to thank and a few things to go through first before we get started with our brilliant speakers this evening. And our first thanks goes to Lift Lessons, who are an excellent support to Women Ed with our webinars. You can see their handle there. Please do give them a follow and a thanks on Twitter for all of their support. So to take you through a little bit about Women Ed, one of the first things to share with you, of course, is our mission. And our mission is to empower more women in education, to have the choice to progress on their leadership journey. And the word choice is really, really important to us. We recognise that women have different leadership journeys to men, and that is absolutely fine. We really want to acknowledge that that is absolutely fine. We don't need to compare ourselves when it comes to our journeys into leadership, when it comes to comparing to the journeys of men. Our values are really important to us. They drive absolutely everything we do. They drive how we work. I know Rosanna's going to talk about our 8 C's later. Clarity, communication, connection, confidence, collaboration, community, challenge and change are all of the things that drive us forward and really make our work worthwhile. So they are our core values. You can see them in so many different places. If you've been to a Women Ed event before, you will have seen these. Our 4 focus campaigns, and this has expanded hugely because Women Ed started as a very small conversation 5.5 years ago, but we now have 4 focused campaigns that we think would make a huge difference to women in education, and particularly women in leadership in education. So we talk a lot about increasing representation in leadership roles, particularly increasing representation of Black, Brown, Asian women in leadership roles, and advocating for flexible working practices as well as reducing gender pay gaps. This is a really, really important one for us. Community is one of our 8 C's, and our networks have grown and grown over the years. And you can see there, we currently have 30 networks which span across 19 different countries. You can see the span of that there. And actually, it's very exciting to be able to share that we are now in early discussions with Ethiopia, India, and Malaysia to expand across 3 more countries and 3 more country networks. We talk a lot about impact at Women Ed, and you can see just some of our impact here. And we measure our impact in so many different ways, from our Twitter followers to our blog, which you can find on our website, newsletters, our network leaders, global regional events, collaborations with the Department of Education, loads of different partnerships, and of course our published book, soon to be books, with Sage. And at Women Ed, we are all volunteers, so our partnerships are really, really important to us. So it's really exciting to keep seeing that impact and those partnerships increase. As I mentioned, books, soon to be plural, really exciting that Being 10% Braver is due for publication on the 19th of December. So an excellent Christmas present, stocking filler perhaps. We already have 10% Braver, which was out a couple of years ago. And the books are really important to us because they really help us increase our reach beyond social media, which is obviously where we started and where a lot of our work takes place online, but the books really help to increase that reach beyond that. And I need to take a moment here, of course, to plug our global unconference. This link will be sent out to you. And the unconference takes place over the first weekend in October, the 2nd to the 4th of October. 1 ticket gets you access for the whole weekend. So please do use that link to take a look into that and register. Our contacts and channels, we have again expanded this significantly over the years. On our website, which has recently been redesigned, you can find access to our newsletter, blogs, and you can also find us obviously on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and quite excitingly Spotify. We have some playlists on there. I curated a 10% Braver Spotify playlist, so it's definitely worth having a little look at. This quote, it has always been an important one to Women Ed, but obviously a really significant and poignant one to remember today. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made, and quite rightly just felt really appropriate to draw attention to that quote today. So we often pose the question, how will you be 10% braver? And this is what we want you to think about this evening and as you move forward after today. You can put it in the chat, make a pledge, how will you be 10% braver? You can tweet it with the hashtag 10% braver. And don't forget to tag Women Ed and hashtag Women Ed as well. So moving into our programme for this evening, some really excellent speakers. I'm so pleased to have some amazing North East speakers with us this afternoon. We've got some excellent he for she's as well, so please do hashtag he for she. And we've got a wide range from primary all the way up to our keynote speaker, the CEO of the Charter College of Teaching, Alison Peacock, who will be joining us later this evening. So I'm going to start us up. As a lead practitioner in English, ITT and NQT professional mentor, I became Women Ed North East Regional Network Leader last year and have learnt quite a lot over the course of my time at Women Ed. So I'm going to make a start by talking about 10% braver and how I was 10% braver personally on my early leadership early career, in teaching. So I want us to start off, and I talk about this whenever I talk about 10% braver. I want us to think about who we think about when we think about bravery. And I just want you to take 30 seconds to just imagine the people in the world that you consider to be brave. And I know that quite a lot of the time we think about people who are physically or mentally strong, someone who speaks out against injustice, someone who fights for their beliefs, the rights of others. But also, I want you to think about the bravest women that you know personally. Strong matriarch, people who overcome adversity, illness. But no matter the actual reason, I know that we all know women who have demonstrated the concept of being what we say the extra 10% braver. And in a world where we have to speak twice as loud to be heard and sometimes work twice as hard to be in the room where it happens, we often have to find that extra 10%. So I'm going to take you through a brief journey through my early career in teaching and highlight some of those moments where, on reflection, although I didn't have Women Ed and the 10% braver mantra at the time, the bravery doesn't always have to be big. So I'm going to start with the first day of my Pgce placement, my first Pgce placement, where I was mistaken for a student. I was only 3 years older than the students at the sixth form college, granted, but still, it did feel like a bit of a setback at the time. It was lunchtime and I was being told off by the deputy head for being about to take my lunch out of the refectory, something that only staff were allowed to do. And I thought to myself, goodness me, hold your head up. You're a member of staff. And I showed him my badge and I explained. So the first lesson with being 10% braver is speak up. In my NQT year, I made quite a big mistake. I picked a school that I had not looked into enough. I hadn't known well enough. I ignored a lot of warning signs. I wasn't observed in my interview lesson for the first 20 minutes and then was told in my feedback, while I was backhandedly being offered the job, that they didn't see enough variety in my lesson. I didn't think anything of it when it transpired that there were 13 new members of staff that September and 11 of us were NQTs. So after 6 months of being berated and support planned, and I use support in inverted commas, I watched countless members of staff crying in the staff room and going off on long-term sick. And I was driving home every night racking my brains for something else that I could do, knew how to do. But actually the truth was that when I was in the classroom with the right students, ones who weren't throwing tables or beating up the on-site police officer, I did love teaching. So my next sort of lessons there is, 1, do research, and 2, change your environment. The head teacher called me in for a meeting about February of my NQT year. My union rep was unavailable, so I'd asked to change the meeting. You didn't see this particular head teacher without your union representation. She did agree, but when the original meeting time came, she came and found me anyway and told me, or tried to tell me, that the school wouldn't be extending my temporary contract, to which I spoke up and said no, I was already seeking employment elsewhere. And interestingly, within 6 weeks at my new school, I had a TLR for raising the quality of teaching and learning across the whole school. No support plans, no meetings, just support and encouragement. And it makes a huge difference. So I guess the lesson there is that even if you aren't sure that you have the experience, apply anyway. The things that you don't know how to do right now, you can learn to do, trust me. I'd never observed anyone teach, I'd never given any feedback, but I learned how to, and you can as well. When I moved to the Northeast 6 years ago now, I began my 4th year of teaching, and that was a more personal moment of bravery, but it was here I really began to develop my voice with confidence. I asked questions, I demanded answers, and I stood my ground. And it was at this point that I discovered Women Ed. It was a community of people talking about exactly how I felt and exactly what I was thinking. I talked to people with ambition about my desire to grow into middle leadership. I was able to complete my NPQML, and I gained my current position as a lead practitioner, despite the insinuation from a former colleague not to set myself deadlines. I'd only just got married after all, when I said I wanted to be in middle leadership by the time I was 30. The 10% braver motto has really become my mantra when I've applied for jobs that, even though I haven't got yet, I know I've exercised my bravery by putting myself forward. And when I spoke at the regional conference after taking part in Women Ed's Inspiring Women programme, and again last October at the National Conference, when I became a regional network leader, when I wrote blogs, when I organised this event, I know that I'm still continuing on my 10% braver journey, even though I'm now far beyond my early career. So I know without a doubt that everyone listening can as well. So bravery doesn't always have to be big. It can mean something smaller. It can mean asking a question. It can mean saying what you want, making a move or a change, knowing your worth, reducing and eradicating apologetic language, and sharing your experiences and your achievements through things like lead meets like this, workshops and blogs. And I want to end by talking about that word ambition. And I shared this at the regional network conference a couple of summers ago. Elwoods is a huge inspiration, obviously. And I always just think to myself, what would Elwoods do? Because she did not lack in ambition or confidence. And Reese Witherspoon said at the Glamour Women of the Year Award in 2015, ambition isn't a dirty word, it's just believing in yourself and your abilities. So I have to question what would happen if we were all brave enough to believe in our own abilities, to be a bit more ambitious. And she, and I agree, think that the world would change for the better. So next up today we have Susan. I'm going to flick through slides for everyone. So Susan, if you'd like to share your mic, and we can start.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So I was going to start off by saying, sorry, this is, maybe haven't had the most remarkable or interesting of careers, but then Katie said we need to reduce, apologetic language, and I thought that's exactly right. I've always been, I think I was always somebody who did that apologetic language quite a lot throughout my career, and it wasn't until attending Women Ed events starting a few years ago that I started to really think about that and how that is something that I needed to change. So I think that's a good message to start with. So yes, I'm currently a senior secondary skit tutor at Shotton Hall, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about my career path to date and just some kind of tips for having that, well, as it says, having the confidence to go for promotion. And again, it's largely about the mantra of the 10% braver. That's something that is hugely resonated with me since going to Women Ed events and reading the book and so on. So yeah, could you just share the next slide, please, Katie? Thank you. And then just all of the slides here. Thanks. Right, so when I said maybe it's not too remarkable, it's been pretty straightforward, I suppose. So did a history degree, history masters, and then history Pgce, all at Newcastle University. Then my NQT role was at an all boys Catholic school in Sunderland. I taught there I think I was there for a year when I put in an application to be Key Stage 3 coordinator. Now, there wasn't actually a position going at the time, but I think I was quite an early example of being quite brave in my career, because I felt I was doing all the work of a Key Stage coordinator without maybe the recognition. Other departments had Key Stage coordinators at the time, history didn't, and I did a lot of work for the Key Stage 3 curriculum, making lots of schemes of work from scratch, assessment materials, and so on and so forth. So I put in a letter and actually got a Key Stage coordinator position. So I think that was a good step. Then I went for promotion to another school to be head of history at Bolton School. And then when the opportunity came to work at Shotton Hall in 2015, I moved to Shotton Hall, where I was also head of history. And then I think there's just another bullet point at the bottom there. Katie, if you just, thank you. And then, so now to my current role. So I've always been history teacher and head of history in 2 schools. And then now my current role is senior secondary skit tutor with Shotton Hall Skit, which I absolutely love. So I feel I'm now in the position that is something that I've really wanted to do for a long time, is to be involved in teacher training. And I feel at the minute I've got the best of both worlds, because I still get to teach history. I still teach year 11 history, and I still am a team leader for the exam board as well. So I'm still keeping in with the history teaching, whilst also starting to be increasingly involved in the teacher training as well. So yeah, just the next slide, please, Katie. Thank you. Just all of the next slide. Thank you. Yes. So just what I would say is, first of all, you know what, I'm not talking here about going for promotion for the sake of it. Of course, you do that if and when the time is right for you. Being a teacher in itself, as we all know, is no mean feat. It's a hard job. It's a very rewarding job. And I think, you know, for some people there might be no desire to go for promotion, and that's absolutely fine. I think the first priority is just to become a really good classroom practitioner. Do your very best. Of course, if you want to go on to become you know, a second in department, head of department or something, then you need to be really feel like you're at the top of your teaching game, as it, you know, and to have to kind of inspire others to follow you, I would say. So I would certainly say don't go for something if you don't feel that the time is really right for you. And I'm just looking at my notes here, I've written some things down. You know, go for what you're passionate about. So there are different routes to take. I've very much taken the subject route, the department route, because the pastoral route just wasn't for me. You know, but then some people would rather go down being maybe like a deputy head of year than a head of year, and so on. So of course, my message here is just, you know, you don't go for things for the sake of it. Really find what's right for you, and do what you feel passionate about. Yeah, the next slide, please, Katie. And just click all through to the last bullet point. Thank you. Yeah, so these are my top tips. These are I was just thinking about what I would say to people who are wanting to progress in their early career. So number one, there, just make the most of every single CPD opportunity available. I, over the years, have done absolutely loads. You know, sign up for things. As you go on there, like middle leadership courses, maybe. If there's NPQ course qualifications, maybe the NPQML, for example, if it's available at school. If not, ask, you know, don't wait to be invited to CPD. Ask the question, ask your head of department, your line manager, you know, I'm really interested in a certain aspect of teaching and learning, for example. There's something I'm really interested in. Is there anything I can do? Is there any CPD I can attend? CPD around. During lockdown, during school closures, I made the most of attending a lot of free online CPD, and I think that's one of the few benefits to come out of that horrible situation, is that we've got a lot more opportunity to do things like this online, and there's just a wealth of CPD out there if you look for it. So I would say that's such an important one. Next one, take on additional responsibilities. So when you feel the time is ready and you want to do something beyond your classroom teaching, if that is the case, then you could become a subject mentor, you know, for a skit or Pgce, if your school's involved with it. Maybe offer to write a scheme of work or make some new lesson resources for the whole department, you know, get yourself noticed. Maybe organise an educational visit, run revision sessions, set up a club, offer to deliver some CPD. There's not many schools would say no to you delivering CPD if you've got something to offer and you want to share your like some good practice with other colleagues. And then exam marking, if you want to go down the subject route, maybe up to head of department or something like that, then I think exam marking is a very important thing to do, a very useful thing to do. Second in department opportunities, you mightn't feel ready to go to be a head of department, but often a good stepping stone is to be like a deputy subject leader or second in department. So just look for those opportunities. I would say it's very important to keep abreast of educational research, both subject specific and more general. Join subject associations, keep reading, read tests, read relevant literature about your subject and so on. And then just in terms of the job interview, going for jobs, you know, when you feel ready, and as Katie said as well, don't think you've got to have every last you know, tick every part of the specification before you'll ever go for anything. Just go for it. What have you got to lose? If you think something's for you, don't let those doubts hold you back. And I've put on the PowerPoint there, it might take some time before you're successful, but every interview is really good practice. And it's hard to say, it's hard sometimes, you know, I've been in a situation years ago when I've been for jobs and haven't got it, and I've came home and I've cried and cried after a job interview because I wasn't successful. And, you know, and you feel like it's the end of the world at the time, but you really just need, it sounds a bit cheesy, but you just need to bounce back from it, learn from what went wrong, and you do better on the next one. You know, it is really strong, maybe I would say, and maybe it just wasn't the right school for you if you didn't get the job. I do believe that. Sounds a bit sad, but after job interviews, I come back and I would write down the questions I would ask, and I would write down what answers I'd given, and just kind of, you build up a bank of them as well as a bank of experience, I suppose, and it all helps build your confidence. Next point about interviews as well, often you will be offered feedback after an interview if it wasn't successful. I would say always take that. It might just be over the telephone, often it is, or if not, you could request some feedback. You know, can I just ask which questions I could have done better on? It's really useful. Throughout your career, be a reflective practitioner. I know that's something we try to encourage with trainee teachers in SCIT, but you need to just, instead of, you know, going home and getting too upset if you've had a bad lesson, which we all, you know, we all do from time to time, especially maybe more so in the early career stages, you just need to learn from it. Just, you know, dust yourself off and think, right, is there something I could do differently next time? And I think that's really, really important throughout your career. And then sort of links to the last one on there, try to keep a positive attitude and stay cool. Keep your cool under stress. Now that's of course much easier said than done. Teaching, it is a very stressful job at times. We all know that it can be a big workload and so on. But I would just say, if you look at the people who are in the leadership positions in schools, they're people who generally can keep their cool under the most stressful of situations. I quite like the, you know, like the swan analogy. On the surface, they look all calm and serene and everything is great, but we don't see the fact that underneath there's a lot of paddling those feet going on. But I think it's about the impression that you give off to others. So I think that's really, really important. Don't be too much of a negative person at work, and try to stay calm as much as possible. I think that's really good advice. And then there's just a couple of kind of quotes on the last couple of slides, Katie. Yeah, so this, as I said before, the 10% braver message really resonated with me. And I think when it came to the job, looking at applying for the job that I've got now, the SCIT position, which I wanted so much, I was really doubting whether to go for it, because I think the imposter syndrome thing, I know they say that women tend to get that more than men. Don't know how true that is, but certainly I've always suffered from it to a degree, I think. It's taken me a long time to get the level of self-belief that I have now. And I think, you know, I'm still working on it. It's really important in going for the next step in your career. But I quite like that one there. There are people less qualified than you doing the things that you'd like to do just because they believed in themselves, and you've just got to believe in yourself. And for me, you know, when those niggling doubts about should I go for the job, so that the current job, you know, that I've got now, the SCIT position, thinking, well, what if I don't get it? You know, it's an internal position. It can be, I think, a bit scary to go for a job within your own school. What if I don't get it? Who else is going for it? Well, they'll be better than me. What will everybody else in my department think? Oh, how humiliating will it be if I don't get it, and I've got to still then come back and do my job and be in charge of those people in my department, lead those, and they'll know I haven't got the job. So all these doubts were really full in my head. But in the end, the 10% braver thing, I genuinely thought about that, and I thought, no, just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You're never going to get anywhere if you don't go for these things. And I'm absolutely, of course, delighted that I did. And there's just one more slide there, Katie. Thank you. So just some thoughts to finish with then. Not going to read them out, but I think that's some quite good messages there. Key thing, just absolutely having that belief in yourself. I think one thing I thought as well, when going for the interview and having those doubts as to whether I should go for the position, was thinking, well, the people who are going to be interviewing me, you know, the head teacher and the deputy head and so on, they've been there and done that. They've had to go through exactly the same process to get to where they are, and they've had to believe in themselves to get there. So yeah, I would just leave with that. Would be my final message. Just really believe in yourself, and you can't go wrong. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Susan. That was brilliant. Really good advice there. Next up, we have Sean Harris, if he is still here.
I am still here. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't just
Sean.
slip away there to make a cup of tea, honestly. Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to talk through how to fail as an NQT and other generally crap advice. But before you all decide to leave at this point, it is rooted in some research. It's rooted in a bit of qualitative feedback we've had from early career teachers, CEOs, head teachers as well. So please do stay on for this bit if that's okay. Can I have the next slide, please, Katie? Great. So this is based on an article that I wrote, let me think, sort of last year with a number of folk from across the north. So again, it's rooted in practice. I'm a former NQT once upon a time. I'm a former NQT mentor. I do quite a bit of writing, researching, and I'm prolific on Twitter. So shameful plug tonight for more followers, please. You'll find me next to the hashtag he for she. Next slide, please, Katie. So just going to take 30 seconds with you all at the start of this session, just to have a think about and jot these in your moleskin, in your notebook, whatever it is that you're writing in tonight. But just think for a moment, what are the 5 main sources that it might be whose, it might be what's in your life that have given you decent advice, support, information? Just have a go, 30 seconds, no more than 5. Great. So, Katie, if you could just reveal some of these, that would be great. So I'm not suggesting this is an exhaustive list, and some of these may match what you've got on your own. It might be friends, it might be partners, it might be your nan or your mum. Shout out for the women in our lives there that are great role models. It might be social media, it might be Twitter, where you get most of your, most of your sort of advice from in recent days. I'd be surprised if anyone's put the government on there, but that's the only politics I'm going to chuck out there tonight. So this is great, right? If you've got people in your life that are giving you really sound advice, that's fantastic. But just moving into that next slide, Katie, actually, if we think about those people that give us sound advice, it's probably because at some point they've either received sound advice, they've learned from their past experience. But actually, if their experience is limited, or if they themselves have had duff advice, then the chances are they're probably going to advocate that advice to us as well, right? So, you know, many a time my nan would give me advice, which, you know, I won't share in the meeting tonight, that was just totally misinformed, right? It was just totally way back in the 1930s, 40s, maybe where it belonged, okay? I remember one of the things I'll share with you, that I got a wart as a teenager, okay? We've all been through that phase, right? I got a wart, and my nan said, if I rub ham on it, okay? Now, I'm not going to tell you what happened to my face shortly afterwards, but I certainly got more warts, okay? Really duff medical advice. But let's think about those people in our schools for a moment. And I appreciate this isn't all blokes, but we know that sometimes blokes will very much be at the forefront of this in terms of duff advice, okay? So thinking, for example, that NQT mentor that maybe actually didn't have a great training experience themselves, that head teacher that maybe really rules with his or her morals, which are totally not aligned to our own. And we've heard a few examples of those in terms of some of the analogies shared this evening. And so what I'm about to share with you is some real kind of dodgy pearls of wisdom that I'm sure were shared with the right intent and with the absolute kind of right conditions, but actually they were just totally misinformed, totally inexperienced, and weren't in a good position to give those bits of advice. So Katie, let's see the first one. So this is from Amy. Some of you will have read Amy's work in the tests. Amy's an English teacher over in Cumbria, does some fantastic work on behaviour. Do give her a follow. And in her NQT year, she tells me she was told, don't plan your lesson, just turn up and see what happens. And to be fair, this was probably said in the spirit of don't over plan, but it came out from the person mentoring her as, don't worry about planning, that's so overrated, just rock up and really kind of wing it. Well, actually, let's really think about that for a moment. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but Katie, on that next slide, I'm not going to go into all the research on this, but what we know is that we've pretty much come to the conclusion that science, the science of learning has to go into the science of planning, right? And it is a skill. It's not just something that we do for the sake of it. Similarly, I'm not saying it has to be on a kind of, formulaic lesson plan, but the research says that planning lessons, planning what you intend to teach is a really critical part of the job that we do. Similarly, how we plan that information into chunks of digestible learning is also key as well. Giselle Mahoney is an NQT, actually. She's an RQT now, a very successful RQT that I had the pleasure of being a mentor to at Norham High School in North Shields. And Giselle offered this advice to us tonight. She says, be suspicious of any resource or lesson plan that suggests you can just do it without planning. Some really helpful advice for those of you in the room that maybe are new to the profession. So planning is key. Next slide, please, Katie. So this is from John Tate. Some of you will know John Tate as an author. He's Deputy CEO of a trust in North Yorkshire. And John was told this advice a number of years ago as an NQT. He was told, just settle the kids by getting them to routinely copy down learning objectives. And it's really interesting that John, because he's really kind of key on this stuff, right? He goes away and he does some calculations on this, and he works out that, roughly 3 minutes per objective, or 3 minutes copying them down per child, which is, about 5 lessons a day in our schools, right? So 5 days across a week, 39 weeks in a year. So this equates to about 50 hours of lost learning a year, if you really want to do the calculations. It's total nonsense, right? Don't do it. If anyone's telling you to copy down those objectives, seriously, guys, there's another way of doing it. Let's look at the next slide, please, Katie. We know that introducing objectives, introducing what you intend to learn and why you should be learning that and how that learning is hinged is critical, but there's other ways of doing it. So, for example, research talks about classroom instruction at the start with a 5 to 8 minute review of curriculum content is really key. And actually that was trendy before COVID, right? But now we know even more so that we have to do this whole embedding learning time and time again. Sherilyn Allen, who is one of the assistant heads, I believe, over at Northern Education Trust, offers this advice to us tonight. She says, keep objectives short and sharp to focus learning. Really think, what am I trying to get out of this lesson? What is the point of it? If it's too wordy to us as professionals, as educated individuals, well, actually, we can bet our bottom dollar that it's going to be way too wordy for children, right? Next slide, please, Katie. So just a couple more duff pearls of wisdom. One of my personal favorites, don't smile until Christmas. Pardon my French, anyone in the room tonight, but I was told the advice, be a bastard, yeah? Be a bastard till Christmas. That's fine, guys, And then I thought about this and I thought, okay, so I don't know if I really look up to those people that were a bastard until Christmas for me, right? For my high school years. We remember those teachers probably for the wrong reasons. And James Wilson, who is a brilliant hashtag he for she, head of school and a brilliant smiler up in Northumberland, give him a follow. Let's just think about some of the research on this for a minute, this idea of don't smile till Christmas. Well, we know that research says that actually optimism is really good for our well-being, right? That actually smiling can impact our mood. I won't go too much into research on that tonight. But here's an interesting one. It invokes a similar pleasure experience when we eat chocolate. So smiling, okay, I'm not saying go and test this tonight, guys, but smiling is apparently a similar sensation to eating chocolate over time, I believe, okay? Again, go and do your own research on that one. But actually, it's not about being difficult with children. What it's about is being fair and being firm. It's about following the existing protocols in place in that school. James Wilson says, I smiled and had some of the best classes. Sherilyn Allen Net reminds us, be consistent in the application. If you're an early career teacher, if you're a new teacher, really familiarize yourself with the system policies and follow that like to the nth degree, right? One of the things I often found as an NQT mentor is there was a reluctance because some NQTs thought, if I do that, actually it's making it look like I've got a problem in my classroom. On the contrary, I would say actually if you don't follow it, you will encounter problems in your classroom. Next slide, please, Katie, just to wrap up. So one thing I used to do as an NQT mentor, I still do this with many of my colleagues in my new role at Ambition Institute, is in our weekly meetings, I ask for 3 things. I say, what are you going to applaud from the previous week? What is it you can give thanks for? What is it you can champion and celebrate? And that totally links into our hashtag 10% braver this evening, doesn't it? You know, what is it from the last week that's gone well? We need that more than ever in the current climate, right? It might be that you remembered your face mask when you went to Morrison's. That's fine, okay? But what about the action? What is it you really need to do? And what I would do as an NQT mentor is think, okay, what's on my to-do list? But of that, what are the top 3 things I need to focus on this week? And finally, ask, what are the questions you need to bring to me? And actually, I found that if I didn't use this structure, then I, as a mentor, but my NQTs as well, would just make that meeting really problem-centered. It would just become a sort of whinge about certain kids, okay? So instead, applaud, what can I champion? Action, what do I need to do? Ask, what do I need help with? And Katie, finally, these slides will get shared out after the meeting. Next slide, please. But there's loads of links here as well. So if you want to really go kind of deep dive, pardon the Ofsted terminology there, into some of the research and thinking behind this, there it is. You can access the full article as well. Do drop me a tweet and I'm happy to have others use the slide in their own setting if that's helpful. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Sean. Natalie.
Hi. So I'm Natalie. I'm Miss King Teach on Twitter, and I am a Year 5 teacher currently in a small primary school in Gateshead. So my talk's just about my career of it was an interesting journey to where I am now. I've seen that there's a lot of trainees in the talk and in the chat, so I'm hoping that they'll be reassured that they will get their job that they want in the end, and that some people might like relate to the story that I have as well. So next slide, please. So I actually moved away from the Northeast and I went to Liverpool because I was a really, really shy person, like really shy. So I thought I forced myself into a situation where I couldn't be shy anymore. So I went to Liverpool Hope and I studied for a 4-year primary teaching degree from 2011 to 2015. I got to a point, it was late June, July. I still didn't have a job. I wasn't getting interviews. I wasn't getting shortlisted, and I was getting really worried. Next slide, please. I managed to get an interview eventually. It was back home. I did the interview lesson. I got the formal interview. I got the job, but it wasn't what was advertised. So when I went to the school in September, it was a PPA role. So I was teaching every year group covering PPA. And the school wasn't the right fit for me. I didn't feel fully supported. And I think that's because it was a lack of research beforehand. So my word of advice is always visit the school, ask questions such as what's the marking policy, what's their expectations for planning as well. I figure like that's essential because you could get overwhelmed if it doesn't fit with your style. I only completed 1 term of my NQT year there. So school wasn't the right fit for me and I felt very deflated at the end. Started to feel like teaching wasn't for me. Next slide, please. So in 2016, I started my supply journey. Now, many people think that supply is like failing, essentially, because I remember in my current school that I'm in now, I got a long-term supply job there first. And I was meeting the parents, had a parent meeting, and one of the parents said, oh, no offense, but all the best teachers already have a job and they wouldn't use supply, which is not right because people go into supply for different reasons. So before that, I did supply for 2 years and I wouldn't be the teacher I am today without it. I made lots of networking connections because I went to the same schools over and over again. So, and they gave me references, I got resources from them, and I learned so much from them as well. I picked up lots of tips and tricks in there, because once you start a school, different policies, different ways. So you learn through just thinking on your feet as well. And I felt like that was really important, because sometimes you get to that point in lessons, you're like, right, what do I need to do now? And so how all schools are different, and made me see like what sort of school I would like to work in. And supply really is the next emergency service, is what I believe. And does take a special type of person to just do that and turn up to school and just teach a brand new set of children every day. Next slide, please. So I eventually did get a long-term supply at the school I'm in now. But I was getting really worried I wasn't getting my NQT year done, because it was getting that time, that 5-year period of getting it done. So I finally secured an interview for the school that I'm in now, and it was for a long-term role. I was only actually meant to be there for 3 months, but then I got an interview and they kept giving me a temporary contract. Then they liked me so much they gave me a permanent job. So I eventually completed my NQT year. And I passed with flying colours, because all that supply work, I found it quite easy. I knew most of the things after that. Next slide, please. So the moral of the story is just never give up. You'll finally find the right school for you. Look around, ask questions. And if it's not right school for you, even if you do get the job, it's fine to leave and find somewhere else, because your well-being is really important. And if you're not happy there, move on. Supply doesn't mean that you failed. It's a chance to gain lots of experience, because I've now taught like every year group in different settings. I say always ask for help. There's someone always going to be willing to help you no matter what. Like, they will be happy to drop things to help you, because they wouldn't want their colleague to struggle. I know I'm more than happy to help anybody. Set time for you. Like, when you're burnt out and stressed, you're not the best teacher. You're not on the top of that game. And the children will know that. And that's not good for the children either. Prioritise your tasks. If it can be left, leave it. If those set of books don't need to be marked straight away for the next day, just leave them. Try live marking as well, marking with the children, whole class marking. That I also suggest is make that support network. I made mine through Twitter, which I did in 2014 actually, and join hashtag talks. Like, I do Primary Rocks every Monday, and it talks about different topics on a Monday, and I learned so much from that, and it's helped me immensely as well. And don't be afraid to ask things on Twitter. If you need help with something, someone will be willing to help you there. I know mine was quite a short chat, but there we go.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next up we have Rachel.
Hi all. Can everyone hear me? Because I've had loads of trouble with this. So am I right now? Right, brilliant. I apologise now. I've got several children around me, so it could be at any point that I throw one up in the air or another one comes along. So just bear with me on this one. Right, so mine, I'm taking it, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm poo-pooing the experience, because as all of the other panellists have said, we have all been there. We've all been there where we feel that the world is going to come crashing down if we don't get to 3 o'clock, and we've got a book scrutiny the next day, and we've got a lesson observation coming up, and we've got the dreaded year 9, period 5 on a Friday, and you just know that it's going to be hell because they've had PE the lesson before. We have all been there, and so this was just me being a bit tongue-in-cheek, and my title comes very much from how I've been able to deal with my anxiety. So my presentation is Did She Die though, and it's just a bit of an antidote about like where I've come from and how I've gone on my leadership journey. and just where I am now, and hopefully it'll just give people some advice. If not, it might just give people a giggle, and they might think, oh well, at least I'm not as bad as her, and she's still keeping children alive. So we'll see what happens. We've got the next slide, please, Katie. Right, just a little bit about me, just so you understand. That is me with him a couple of nights ago trying to get this presentation into Katie because I was already 2 days late, and he shat through his sleep suit. Anybody who's got children will know that this is just a horrible moment. Anyone who doesn't have children, I've probably put you off having children, but don't worry, you survive. You just bin the sleep suit afterwards, it's fine. So I'm a mother. I've got 3 boys. I'm a stepmother. I've got a gorgeous stepdaughter who has been popping into screen every now and again. She might run over in a bit. I've got an amazing partner who is that amazing that he's not in tonight because he's gone to football. So we're winning at life there. I'm in the process of going through a divorce. I am late for everything. I was late for this. In terms of logging on, because I thought I was early, but I wasn't. But going into my career, I'm a teacher of English, and that is my passion. English literature, English language is my passion. And when I got a job as an English teacher, I felt like I was a superhero, or that I had just got an Academy Award, because passing my initial teacher training year was the best feeling ever, because I got to do my dream job. And I think from that, and from my passion, and I'm not the best English teacher in the world, however I have a massive passion for teaching and for being around young people and for really seeing staff succeed. I love seeing my colleagues and my friends succeed at whatever they're passionate about, and I think through that I've managed to bumble my way along, and I'm now embarking on a core headship. So it's the first core headship in Stockton-on-Tees. I'm really excited about it. So once I'm back at work in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be embarking on this core headship with another head teacher, which is absolutely fabulous. We've got 2 women leading a school, which for Women's Ed is just absolutely amazing. So there's my 10% braver, Katie. Flex appeal, I'm massive on being flexible, that flexible approach to working. In January next year, I'm going to move my hours and I'm going to go part-time. If any of you are on Twitter, Instagram, anything like that, if you follow Mother Pucker, she does some great stuff around flexible working, and flexible working for women and for men, and for making it more the norm. It's not just because you've got children, it might just be that flexible working, part-time working works better for you, and it's always something that you should ask about. I'm at a pro, so for those of you who don't know, that's a pupil referral unit, and that is where we get to educate some of the most amazing, inspiring young people that unfortunately other schools have just missed out on unlocking their potential. And I find that I'm in a very fortunate position because I get to see children, and sometimes, as sad as it is, I get to see them when they're right at rock bottom, when they think that education's given up on them, and then I'm in such a fortunate position where I get to do exam results day with them, where they then say, oh my goodness, I never thought I'd complete school, let alone leave with a host of GCSE results. So it's a fantastic place to work, and I'd advocate anybody to spend some time in AP. I went from mainstream to AP. I love mainstream. I'm a total advocate of mainstream teaching as well, but I think that it's just great for any teacher if you're in contact with your local pro, please go down, see if you can just pop in for the day and maybe just do some shadowing, maybe just see what the pro are dealing with, and I promise you it will help you in your teaching practice. If you're in the northeast, come along to the Stockton Pro. I'm more than happy for you to DM me later and we can sort that out. So I've split it into 2 parts, and I'll try not to ramble on. Katie, if I do, just usher me along because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But part 1's about getting the job. And I think that that's not just necessarily for your initial teacher trainers. As Katie and some of the other panellists have said, sometimes we're in a position that we don't want to be in. Sometimes we've taken a job at a school that we really don't want to be in. And it doesn't matter whether we're an NQT, an RQT, whether we've been teaching 15 years. We might have just found that either the school that we were in has changed, or that maybe we've joined a school thinking it was one thing, and then, like Katie alluded to in hers, it turns out to be another and we need to get out. So it's about getting the job. So my first part is just going to go through getting the job. And I think that currently, if you're in a school and you think what is going on with the culture, read Dr. Helen Woodley's book, Toxic Culture. She did it with Ross McGill. It's absolutely brilliant. She's a local lass. She teaches over at Northumbria. She's fantastic. Right, so top tips to think about. I think that Susan and I think that Natalie has also mentioned this, thought about visiting schools. So if you're thinking about applying to that school, visit the school. Don't visit at the end of the day when all the kids have gone home. And if the school is saying that that's the only time you can visit, bit of a warning sign, visit as close to when there's going to be children there as possible. Obviously, we're in COVID times at the moment, so I completely understand if schools aren't doing that at the moment. But if you can, try and get a feel for what it's like when the kids are there. Lesson changeovers is a great time to kind of say, like, what is this school about? What is the culture of this school about? And it'll teach you so much, and it might save you doing those long applications for a school that you don't want to be at. So definitely do that, and don't always go by the Ofsted report. I remember when my eldest son was first starting school, and I did the wrong thing, and I was like, all right, we need to look at the Ofsted report. The Ofsted report, it's an outstanding school. We'll get him there. He'll be great. Within the first year, I realised that that school for my child was not outstanding by any means. And it was really failing us as a family. And I got him out of there, and I got him into a school that was good. So not a million miles away from outstanding, but it was a good school. It was a lot larger. You had a lot more children from different backgrounds, from different cultures. And you know what? That was the best thing I ever did for my child, because I got him in the right school that was right for him. And you know what? Sack the Ofsted report, because don't care what anyone says, that school was outstanding for me, the other school wasn't. So don't always go on your Ofsted report. Always research the school's policies. I think that Natalie mentioned this in hers. Very much think about what their policy is for marking and feedback. What you don't want to do is get yourself into a culture where you are marking with a 24-hour turnaround. I'm hoping that there aren't schools that are still doing this. However, I've been in schools that have done that. And especially if you're in mainstream and you've got 30 children in a class and you're teaching a subject that is heavily requiring essay writing. So going back to the days when kids did coursework, I was a teacher of 4 GCSE classes, and we had a 1-week marking turnover, and I had to do 180 books religiously going on, and this was in-depth, triple marked, what went well, even better if, yellow box. And you know what, it really, I struggled with that personally as a young mum, and having 2 boys at home, I was really struggling with that. And that's what I made it kind of a point on my leadership journey. When I get into a position when I can write policies, I will not be writing a policy like that. And thankfully, we've now got in our school, we have a feedback policy. We don't have a marking policy, we have a feedback policy, because it's all about the feedback. I don't need to see a teacher's writing to know if that kid's progressed. In fact, if I'm seeing a lot of teacher writing, I'm wondering what the kid's doing in the lesson. And I think Natalie picked up on it as well, live mark, amazing. So if they've got that in their policy, that's a good one to have a look at. Also things about staff wellbeing. Staff wellbeing is massive, and you want to know that that school encourages staff wellbeing and there's a policy to go along with it. If you've got the school and you think, you know what, I've visited, it's right for me, I really want to apply, go for it. Read their last inspection report or anything that's written about them, and think about how you can contribute to their school. Let's face it, you've got to put yourself forward, especially in the market at the moment. You've got to think about, you could be going up against another 50 teachers of varying degrees of expertise. So what is it that when your application lands on my desk, what is it that I'm going to go, this person needs the interview? And you know what it'll be, what can you bring to my school? So I want to be able to hear about what initiatives you could bring to my school. I want to be able to hear that you've read my last Ofsted report and you know what my areas for improvement are and how you're going to help me improve those areas. So be thinking about that, and be familiar with up-to-date developments. within education. Twitter is amazing for that, and especially if you haven't got time. I remember somebody saying to me once, what SLT will start doing is they'll drop in on you and they'll ask you what you're currently reading at the moment. And I used to think, how am I going to be able to read a full educational book and just be able to start paraphrasing it off the top of my head in front of everybody? And you know what, Twitter is great for that, because you get little sound bites, and then you listen to those little sound bites and you think, you know what, thank you, Dylan. My eldest looking after my youngest, so I've got a little he for she club going on down here. So Twitter he's not killing him, he's just spoiled. Ignore that sound. Right. Twitter is absolutely amazing for listening to little sound bites and then thinking, is this person somebody who I want to read about? I did this with Emma Turner. Emma Turner has little sound bites, and I thought, you know what, this is a leader that I can get on board with. As a result, I bought her book, read it cover to cover. So it's kind of use Twitter and use the internet to kind of help you out with that, and be getting those educational points in. Refer to each point on the essentials criteria. And I know that sounds daft, but the amount of applications that sometimes I look through and people haven't alluded to any of the essential criteria. In fact, they've made out that they don't know about the essentials criteria. Makes it very hard to then justify, especially if I'm doing this collectively with other senior leaders, why I think that person should get an interview. So very much make sure that when you're filling out your application, make sure that you are ticking all of those essential criteria. So how do you meet the equality and diversity point of that school's policy? Think about those things. Include a cover letter. When I first started and I was applying for jobs, I didn't realise I needed a cover letter. And then it was only some lovely, lovely lady on reception at a school said to me, you do know that all the other applicants put in cover letters, but you haven't. And from that day, I was like, right, I need to get on board with this. And don't do silly things like and we all do it to save time. We do one generic cover letter and we just change the title on the top. Be very careful, because if you send that to a school and it's got a different school's name in it, or you're alluding to something that happens in a different school, you're going to be blown out the water. It takes out your professionalism and your integrity and your want for the job. So make sure you proofread. Always be positive. You know what, we've got far too many mood hoovers in the world that are just sucking out the life, and loads of dementors that are coming over and scaring us. Don't let them do that. Be really positive. And you know what, it's all right if you don't know the answer. Like, I think that we got into a culture at one point of just blagging everything and pretending. You know what, if the person interviewing you knows their stuff, they're going to know that you're blagging it and they're not going to want you. So you know what, best thing to be honest, and do that with the kids as well. If you don't know something, do not try and blag it, because 14-year-olds will know that you're lying and they will have your life and they will never trust you again. Just hold your hands up. You're human. I don't know the answer, but you know what, I'm going to go away and find out, and then I'll come back with that answer for you. You can do that. Right, this quote, absolutely brilliant. And I remember very early on in my career feeling very overwhelmed with the amount of things I had to do. And then somebody kind of summing up Alex's quote lovely for me, and saying, but you're never going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Your to-do list is never going to be finished. And once you come to terms with that, actually, you feel a lot better in yourself once you come to terms with this. It won't ever just magically be the way you want it to be. You've got to put in the hard work. Sometimes things will go right, sometimes things will go wrong. But actually, once you think to yourself, you know what, I might not get to the end of my to-do list today, but I can tick 2 things off, and you know what, that's a real positive, and I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back for getting through that today. You'll find that you feel a lot better, you're less anxious, and actually that'll then show in your productivity, because instead of trying to be perfect all the time, you're just going to be able to get on with what you're doing at that point and make that bit really good. And that's what people want to see. No one's expecting perfection off you. Right, so part 2, you've finished, you've done your initial teacher training year, you've done your NQT year, you've got the job, you are winning at life. Pgce have got to stay along, so get yourself there, get yourself a nice planner. So now some things to think about, because you want this to be a career. This isn't something that you want to be in for a couple of years, burn out, and then hate education forever and go and work in the private sector somewhere. This is something that you want to make a career out of. So first of all, massively take time for you. You know what? As much I love this job and I am so passionate about education. However, I know, and I've learned over the years, that it is a job. And you know what, my family are more important, my friends are more important. Me being able to function as a human is more important than having the perfect lesson, or being everybody's favourite teacher, or being on SLT's radar. So make sure that you take some time for you and whatever you're interested in. If you're interested in educational research and that makes you feel really happy and content and calm, go for it. If you're interested in going out and drinking and having a brilliant time with your friends, do it. Just don't put it on social media, because that'll go nowhere. You don't need a lesson plan. Now, this isn't me saying that you don't need to plan a lesson and you just turn up and wing it. What I am saying is you do not need a 4-hour lesson plan that took you 4 hours to plan on 8 pieces of paper that is colour coded with Pupil Premium, Sen, with this seating plan, with that seating plan. You don't. You just need a well-planned lesson. So however that works for you, as long as it's a well-planned lesson, anybody coming in and the kids coming in and sitting and listening to you will be able to feel that. If it's not well-planned, you can have all the pieces of paper in the world, but it won't make a difference. So don't worry too much on the format, and don't worry too much what everybody else is seemingly doing. Just make sure your lesson plan is well-planned and it's in a format that you can understand, and if somebody else picked it up, they could understand as well. Katie, will you just pop back, just because I'm not sure we're darling. She is. Lesson observations, they don't define you. I've had everything from requires improvement to outstanding. They're all just balky, horrible tags that we put on people. We don't need that. You know what? You just come to the end of your lesson. If you haven't died, if the kids haven't died, no one's blown up, you haven't lost anything, you're winning at life straight away there. If it's a really good lesson, and you know what? If they've walked out of the room and they've learned something, fantastic. So, but it doesn't define you. So don't pay too much attention to, oh, Mary down the road has just got an outstanding, she's been told that she's an outstanding initial teacher training or an NQT. They're not. At the end of the day, we're all getting through this. Some lessons it'll go great, some lessons will be horrendous, and I've done this job for a very long time and I know that not every one of my lessons is bob on. Sometimes I have an absolute crap lesson and it goes horrendously wrong and you think that I'd never been in a classroom before. But the biggest thing there, sit and reflect on it, make sure that that doesn't go wrong again. Set out your stall early on. Safeguarding is king. Make sure that that's your priority. Collaborate with other professionals. No need to reinvent the wheel. If next door is doing something good, get in there, see it, magpie it for your lesson. Reflect. See what's going wrong, what's going right, do more of the bits that's going right. Be researched informed, get yourselves on Twitter, ensure you're visible, so go to school functions, do school events, go on school trips, be visible, make sure the kids see you on the playground. Watch out for drains, they're the mood hoovers, they're going to suck the life out of you. Get yourself next to a radiator, they radiate warmth. And lastly, don't be a mark, take a day off, come back winning. Don't plod on, because you know what, there's no medals at the end of this, there's just these kids that we need to inspire and motivate. And that is me. If you need anything, I'm on Twitter. But thank you so much, Katie, for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Rachel, that was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up we have Rosanna.
Thank you very much, Katie. So yes, I'm Rosanna. I'm lead practitioner and head of Spanish at St Wilfrid School in South Shields. I'm the whole school lead for Pupil Premium, Gender and Disadvantage, and run the school's mentoring and intervention programme for pupils as part of our COVID bounce back strategy. I've been asked to come and speak today about early career leadership. As a bit of background, I started on the Teach First, actually next slide please, Katie, thank you. As a bit of background, I started on the Teach First training programme in 2016, working at a fabulous school in Pgce with a wonderful group of colleagues and a real community spirit. I also love being part of the Teach First community as well. and together founded an organisation called Head Start, providing summer provision for Year 10 pupils to help combat summer learning loss and holiday hunger in the North East. In my second year of teaching, I took my first tentative steps into leadership, and was asked to be school lead for the Brilliant Club, an organisation which aims to widen access to university for pupils from underrepresented groups. At the end of that year, we ran our first Head Start summer school, and whilst having some success, we also learnt many lessons for the following year as well. In my third year of teaching, I took on the role of Head of Spanish at St Wilfrid's, and also felt like I was able to start giving back. So I mentored a trainee in our department, and I also took on the role of staff governor in school. And last year, I worked on building my community through a range of networks, which was invaluable during the COVID pandemic. So I found Women Ed's 8 C's imperative when considering my own leadership journey and thinking about what the next steps are that I want to take. I've always wanted to progress into school leadership, but at times I went for a kind of say yes to everything and see what I like and what works approach. And I think what I've come to realise is that it's that a more cautious approach of selecting key opportunities for development is much more preferable. So the first of the 8 C's that I want to talk about is confidence. This for me came from cementing my classroom practice, which is integral before you start thinking about taking on extra responsibilities. I was fortunate to come in to teach first with previous teaching experience abroad, and having worked as a TA in the UK for a little bit as well. So that first lesson that I delivered in my first year of Teach First wasn't my first time in front of a group of students. Nevertheless, I still had and have a lot to learn. I received good feedback in my training years, which gave me the confidence that I needed to take the next steps in my leadership journey. I'm very much always learning new things though, and have a keen interest in CPD, and have incorporated this into my leadership journey, such as things like co-leading the Edu Book Club, where I pick up fab tips every month. When completing my MPQML, I decided to dedicate some time each Sunday to my own CPD, and that's something that I've continued with since then. I think in the sort of hubbub of school life, it's often hard to find time to prioritise your own development. So for me, setting aside this time for myself meant that I'm able to delve into some edu literature and learn how to improve my classroom practice, which helps me build my confidence in what I do on a daily basis, which is teaching lessons in the classroom. The second of the 8 C's that I want to mention is communication. This was something that I wasn't necessarily great at to start with, and admittedly is probably still my area for improvement. But I've tried to come up with ways to improve it. So again, as part of my MPQML, I introduced a department newsletter, both to share MFL teaching and learning tips, but also to reduce the amount of emails that I was sending and streamline communication in the department. Building connections and collaborating, 2 more of Women Ed's C's that I found integral to my early career leadership. I've been lucky enough to work with some fabulous leaders in education, both in and out of the schools that I've worked in. Connecting and collaborating with the Teach First community has been key for me, from my initial teacher training to co-founding Head Start, to developing my leadership skills through mentoring, to completing my MPQML. I've been incredibly fortunate to have their support and guidance every step of the way. Developing connections through my subject area was really important to me too, as my sort of bread and butter of teaching quality lessons in the classroom is always my main goal. Connecting with the Association for Language Learning, founding the Spanish Teacher Hub through Ed North, and presenting at MFL London alongside some of my MFL teacher idols, helped me hone my pedagogical craft and shape the teaching and learning in my department as well. The next of the 8 C's that I want to discuss is taking on challenges. I'm not shy of taking on something new, which is a mindset that I developed when I lived abroad. I lived in Latin America for 5 years, and I often found myself kind of thrown into the deep end of situations. So I think working in a university in Chile, where teaching was often disrupted by the aftershocks of the world's 5th biggest earthquake, or being warned by my students in Mexico not to walk home that evening after school because the narcos were in town that day. So back in the UK on my leadership journey in education, the resilience that I developed whilst abroad has given me the skills and confidence I need to take on challenges, step out of my comfort zone, and grow and develop my leadership skills. COVID turned everything upside down overnight for us all. Despite it not being easy, I tried to remain positive, embrace change, another C from Women Ed, and channel it to help me push me further on my leadership journey. I helped to develop an online tutoring program for Head Start instead of our usual summer school approach last summer, and embraced all of the opportunities for virtual CPD during lockdown. I helped deliver some webinars through Ed North and MFL London, and co-authored a guide to running summer schools for Teach First, as well as setting up Edu Boot Club with Alex Bellam, who you're going to hear from in a bit. So I've used all of the experiences I've mentioned thus far to help me find clarity, the next of the 8 Cs, about the direction I want to go in on my leadership journey, acknowledging that I can't do it all, but pleased to have been able to give a few things a go in my early career, which has allowed me to make better decisions about what I want to do going forward. By focusing on teaching and learning, I've gained clarity in the career direction and my career direction going forward, and have found my community and built my support networks as a result. My newest position pulls together my interest in teaching and learning and gender, and passion for eradicating inequality for our young people here in the North East. Leadership in the classroom should be prioritised first of all, but when you're ready for that next step, think about how you can embrace Women Ed's 8 Cs to expand your impact. And my final slide, Katie. Thanks. Given the sad news of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing this weekend, I'd like to finish by sharing one of her quotes that I find particularly inspiring. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. I came into teaching to make a difference in the lives of the pupils I teach. I believe that every child deserves a top quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic background, gender, race, religion, or sexuality. And I hope that the trajectory of my leadership journey thus far, now leading on gender and disadvantage, will allow me to have an impact on the lives of the children who need it most going forward. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rosanna. That's such a poignant thing to end on. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Liam. He's going to talk to us about getting the most out of first 3 years in teaching.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant, thanks. So I don't have any slides. I've gone a bit old school. And yeah, basically I'm just going to read. It's a bit like a speech kind of thing here, and hopefully you'll take something from it. But I couldn't resist but to start with a quote from a poem from one of my biggest inspirations, and that is Maya Angelou. So now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. And Maya has another quote, and I absolutely love, you know, I take a lot of my leadership kind of inspiration from Maya Angelou, Oprah Winfrey, you know, like real stereotypical kind of corny spiritual leaders, if you like. But Maya has another quote, and she discusses the power of words, and what she says is that words are things. They get into us, they get in the wallpaper, they get into our skin, they get into our heads, and they become manifest. And so what I'm so grateful for is that there's such a movement as this that's changing kind of the future of education, that you know, it's changing the mindset of how education is led, and I'm just really thankful to have been invited to participate in this, and I hope that anything that I kind of share with you might have some resonance, or might inspire you a little bit, or might just kind of give you some pointers or something to think about. I want to start with, if you Google Teacher Development Trust and the first 3 years of a teacher's career, you'll see evidence, and there's quite a lot of evidence that your first 3 years of professional practice is a foundation stone, and it's where the quickest levels of development happen. Therefore, what we know about those 3 years is that this is where we make, and we continue to make mistakes beyond them, believe me, but this is where we make most of our mistakes. We learn some of our most drastic lessons. We work out who we are as a teacher and what we want to do, and what works for us in our classroom. And these learning opportunities do continue you know, beyond that time, and you know, we should always continue to be open to lifelong learning, but we've got to get you know, NQTs, ITTs really kind of tuned in to getting the most out of these first 3 years. Being a good teacher is the foundation stone of any solid leader. I firmly believe that you cannot be respected I would not be respected if I wasn't in the classroom, making mistakes, having crap lessons, but actually being able to teach as well, and being, you know, enjoying what I'm doing. So make the most of these first 3 years of your career, and I'm going to give you some tips that I've used. I've been teaching 7 years. I've, you know, had quite a variety of schools I've worked in. This is my 4th school. The first one I worked in, I absolutely hated it. So immediately kind of thought I need to find another school. Moved into a second school, had a great time in a city school in Sunderland. Had a great time for the majority of the time. I knew when it was time for me to move on. So I was there for about 4 years, and then moved to a school where I met Katie, and we worked together. Again, just similar, did what I needed to do, took from that school, gave to that school as much as what I felt I could. And I've been in my current role now for almost 2 years, and some of these things still apply. These are like how I like to operate. So the first thing that I like to do is find a coach or a mentor. So in your circumstance as an NQT, you'll be given one. Often this is circumstantial, and you know the situation will dictate who the mentor or the coach is, and you'll get feedback from that person, and that feedback will be useful. But what I really mean here is find someone who shares the same values as you, and someone that you can relate to, someone that you can be honest with, and someone that will be honest back to you. And you know, look at them, look up to them, take from them. At the minute, I go kind of in for our director of secondary schools in our trust, because he's just so inspiring. He's been a head teacher. That's where I want to be. So I listen in on him. I kind of chew his ear off. I probably irritate the life out of him, but I'm not bothered, because it's learning, it's ongoing learning. The first time I did this, I was in the second year of my career, and I met this woman called Anne, and she was just absolutely amazing. She's retired now. And Anne, you know, she'd taught for about 60 years. I'm positive, and she led Pgce and sex education, and that's what I wanted to do. So I just chewed her ear off, and the job came up at the school that I was working at to do that. And eventually, because I'd had that kind of connection with her and the values that she'd supported me with, developing, I was successful in that job. And again, just to kind of go back to me cheesy kind of spiritual leaders, Oprah Winfrey has a quote in her book, for what I know for sure that resonates with me around this, and that is, surround yourself with people who are going to lift you higher. There are so many mood hoovers in schools, so many people who will, you know, suck the life out of you, and it's really easy to fall into that, to clicks and stuff like that. But you've got to get yourself into a position where, you know, you're surrounded by people who are radiators, who will warm you, who will kind of inspire you. So surround yourself with people who are going to lift you high. So that's my first tip. Get a mentor. Doesn't have to be the one you've associated with. Just find someone else that you think, there's something about you that I really like. I want to be like you, or I want to be similar to you, or I want to do the job that you're doing. And the next thing is feedback. And I've just finished reading a book called Daring Greatly by a lady called Brené Brown. And it's, again, another kind of spiritual, cheesy kind of book that I'm using really as a leadership development tool. But she talks quite interestingly about feedback. And what she says is feedback makes us really uncomfortable. And you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable when you're developing. And it's difficult. But what I would say is, you know, you are going to go through change and development. You are going to be at sometimes uncomfortable with change and development. But get uncomfortable with it. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Another really good quote that I've got for this is, I live off inspirational quotes. The people I work with I think the question would I read, but this is, if you don't have a test, you won't have a testimony. You know, this is, you know, this feedback process. It's growth, and when we're pushed beyond where we want to be, it's not comfortable. That is the test, and the testimony is going to be the impact that you are going to have on the kids in the schools that you're working in. Feedback. I've worked as a Senko now for 2 years, and what I've learned, I'm not a psychologist, is sometimes feedback triggers something in us. It can trigger being criticised at a previous point in our life, in kind of our personal circumstances, trigger something in our brains. And the first thing that I would say is be aware of yourself. When you're stepping into the arena to receive feedback, be aware of if you've got any triggers. Be aware of them. It's not easy to deal with them, but the first step for you would just to kind of be aware that when you're getting feedback, if it feels like criticism, your brain might flood your body with kind of hormones because of your hardwiring. But if you can deal with that, that's going to be one way of you kind of stepping into the arena to grow. It's not always delivered in the best way, and I categorise people who give feedback into two. And the first one is people who really want to help you, people who are going to lift you higher, people who want to, see you doing the best. And the other one, quite frankly, I criticise this as to people who shouldn't be giving feedback. I'm going to start to talk about the number twos first. So in a previous school,
I'm going to have to hurry along. I'm really sorry. Can I
I'm nearly finished here. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm very conscious of time and we've got a few more.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go dead quick. So in a previous school that I worked at, we heard some horror stories about a particular leader giving feedback such as standing in particular areas of your classroom clocks not being in particular places. For me, that's not feedback, that's criticism. And that is one kind of category of person. Are they going to help you? Are you in the right school? Are they going to help you become a better teacher? The other category for me is those who will uplift you. So these people will use a hybrid approach of mentoring and coaching. They'll give you some instructions. Please follow the instructions if they're investing the time in you, but the coaching will be a joint venture on your development. You manage this relationship. I would recommend that you manage this relationship and just say, from our conversation, I've got 1, 2, 3 points to work on. Can you come back to me in 2 weeks and see how I've developed? You need to kind of really manage that, but you also need to get into the point of self-validating as well, because at some point your coach or your mentor might not be there to validate you. So when you're surrounded by drains as opposed to radiators, it's really kind of important that you've got those skills to validate you. And this is the last tip that I've got really, is to get yourself a decent set of values and a vision for your career. Where do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? What kids do you want to work with? Who do you want to make a difference to? And how do you want to do it? And this is my 10% braver thing, actually. I worked at a school that had a motto which was aspire, achieve, and something else. I'll not tell you because you will be able to identify the school. But actually, someone at Sunderland University when I was training said to me that children who are not loved at home come to school to be loved. So why is your value, are you operating from aspire, achieve, data, exam results, or are you operating from love, compassion, care? And if you can step into a classroom or into a school and have those values, you're rare, your rarity, and that's 10% braver. And our director of secondary, my colleague at Water Riverside, he told me that he wants all of his staff to treat kids as parents, and I just think that's one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever had. So yeah, question yourself about your values, question yourself about your vision. So 3 tips for you. If it's any use, great. First one, get yourself a mentor. Doesn't have to be the one you're associated with. Copy of them, take from them, listen to them, pick their brains. Work with feedback, manage and control your feedback. And the last one I would just say is get yourself a decent set of values, and don't be scared to say, actually, I'm not that bothered about my values being about achievement. I want the kids to come and feel that they've got a place where they're safe, where they're soothed, where they belong. And yeah, and that's it really from me. So I don't do Twitter, I don't do anything else, but I do email, that's it. So if you want my email address, it's teacherliam27@gmail.com. So if you want to get in touch, It's teacherliam27@gmail.com, and I'm happy to kind of offer any kind of further conversations with anyone who wants them. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Liam. That's
Nice.
really great.
Cheers, Katie.
3 years. Love it.
Thanks.
Next up we have Alex. We've got 15 minutes. I'm really conscious of time. 15 minutes and 3 speakers, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, I'm going to put a timer on for 5 minutes, so if it goes off, I'm sorry, it's going to scare me too. So I'm Alex Bellam. I'm an associate assistant head teacher, which is really hard to say. And I'm going to talk to you about maintaining your compass. So how it is that when you join a school, you can still remain being true to you. So for me, this is something which is really important. If I just put on the next slide. For me, it's something that's really important because you are who you are, and that's what makes you amazing. You are a person, you are a personality, and you've got your own personality at home, you've got your teaching personality, and it's important to keep that separate, but there's also that crossover in the centre, that humour that you bring, that warmth that you bring, that passion that you bring, that crossover, and finding that sweet spot is what's absolutely fantastic. And what you've got to work out is where is the crossover and where is the cut-off. You've got to be true to you. Too often I've been told, well, you know, like, do you really talk about feminism that much in the lesson? Yes, I bloody do, because it's important and that sort of thing. So, you know, for me to be true to me, I talk about these things. So identify who you are as a person, your personality, work out what your teaching personality is and where that sweet spot is in the centre. And don't like apologise for who you are as a person. If you are authentic, your kids will see that and they will buy into that and they will love you for that. Too often we sometimes observe people and then we try and be that person. They might do an amazing kind of teaching strategy and you'll seek to emulate it because it's so high impact and has such value. But remember, that's someone in their teaching personality. Who are you and how can you kind of take that in a different direction? So observe, learn and evaluate. Look at that great practice in order to learn and grow. But consider, would that work for you in your context? How does that meet with your teaching personality? It's kind of like if you pick up someone else's PowerPoint, you're probably going to want to tweak it and have it your kind of sort of way. And it's exactly the same in the classroom. I remember working in a school where it was that the behaviour was quite bad. It was my first teaching placement. And there was a teacher who was really good at kind of like discipline. And I went down that route and I tried to discipline them. And I wasn't that person. I wasn't authentic. And the kids saw through me straight away. And staying true to your purpose as an educator, what is it that got you into teaching? What drove you, that passion, that inspiration to go and share your subject or to educate young people? For me, it's about social justice. It's about diverse history. So BAME, it's about women, it's LGBTQ+. And it's keeping history as a discipline, a really rigorous, authentic discipline. And for me, if I'm not articulating that in the classroom, if that's not in my curriculum, then I'm not being true to me and what I believe that students should kind of have as part of their curriculum, which is these things such as diverse history. And as Ruth Bader Ginsburg kind of says, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. So if you're passionate about something and you believe that has importance within the curriculum and that's what makes you tick as an educator, then kind of agitate, but do so in a way that's going to get campaigners and people to come to you and work with you in a positive way to make that change. You can do so respectfully. And then also, as we've mentioned before through Katie, is the culture of the school. Is it for you? So say, for example, a really high impact school is Michaela, and I think it's really, really fantastic. Would I want to work there? No, because that's a different culture from the one that I would perhaps feel comfortable with. So find that school that has that culture that's going to nurture you and feels right for you. So I'm just going to share a couple of examples, if I just look on the next slide, of how it is that I try to stay true to me. So sorry, could you skip on to the next one? Because I've realised I've got a minute, 20 seconds left. So for me, I had real issues about the lack of women within the curriculum and the lack of diversity. And so for me, that was something which I campaigned about through TM History Icons. And I've worked really hard with my department in terms of incorporating more women into the curriculum and writing about it and kind of promoting it as well. And as we can see there, it's about challenging the canon, the accepted facts of this is what kind of like history was, and it had no women in it. Challenge that, say, well, actually, that isn't what history is. That wasn't what it was meant to be. Actually, a more representative and accurate history is if we have more women in there. But it's about kind of going about that change in a positive way and getting your kind of advocates on side with you. Sorry, could I go into the next slide, Katie? The next one is for me, BAME and kind of ethnic diversity within the curriculum. So, and for me, I think it's important to not only do that to make sure that history is representative, and because for me, it's my moral compass, that's what I wanted to have within my curriculum, and I was concerned that there wasn't enough diversity. But also potential you unlock, advocate and change. If you're promoting change, if you're being true to you, if you're talking about issues which mean a lot to you, such as social justice and diversity, they too will then feel comfortable about the kind of things that feel important to them, and they'll advocate for change and be passionate for change as well. Next slide. And then I'll leave on this. So I've written a chapter that's in the new Being 10% Braver book, and it's about being an introvert. So for me, maintaining my compass as an educator was that I'm an introvert, and for years I kind of hid and thought that that was a negative thing and that I had to be some form of kind of extrovert. And actually I sat down and thought, well, actually, that's not me. I'm not being true to me. Actually, I am quiet. I am reflective. I might come across as like a snooty, cold-hearted cow, but that's not who I am. I'm just shy. And actually I thought that's good, because I reflect on things, I do my research, and actually not everyone can be the gregarious extrovert in the room, and there's something that I bring to the table, and you know what, I'm bloody proud of it. I'm proud to be me and maintain my compass. And that's me.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Did your timer go off?
6 minutes 34 seconds.
Well done. That's great. Yamina, are you with us? Oh. Yamina, are you with us? Are you still there? If not, we might have to skip through. I know Yamina was struggling to make it. You'll get her slides anyway, if she isn't still there.
Katie, she's here.
Oh.
She's put in the chat that she's here, I'm sure.
Oh. Maybe she's had to go.
No, Katie.
Yeah.
She's put in the chat that she's here, so I don't know if she's having trouble getting on.
What have we got? We got some sound issues potentially.
Hello. Hear me?
Oh, Yamina's having some technical difficulties, unfortunately. So we're going to move ahead to our final speaker, our keynote speaker. If I flip through Yamina's very detailed PowerPoint, then our last speaker is our keynote speaker. Alison, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so sorry we're in our last 6 minutes, so I hope that you're prepared to walk us through.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm Alison Peacock. I lead the Chartered College of Teaching, and I'm speaking about why teaching is the best career ever. I've been a teacher all of my life. I've worked in secondary schools, in primary schools, early years. I've worked with children with special needs. I've worked with adults. And most latterly, I'm now working to work with teachers, and have set up the Chartered College of Teaching. And I just want to share with you a story, because I've heard so many brilliant examples from colleagues here this evening about how you can be the best teacher ever, that I can't compete with that. So I'm just going to share a few things. The first is to say that in your classroom, you make the weather. Everything is down to you. If you are smiley and bouncy and happy and optimistic and have high expectations from your students, they will come up to your expectations. If, on the other hand, you're miserable, you slam the door when you arrive, you put things down on your desk and you're kind of like, you're never going to get them where you want them to be. So they pick up your mood. The children pick up your mood. You are someone who makes the weather. And that's absolutely the case throughout your career. When you become a head teacher, if you slam the car door when you arrive in the car park, everybody will cringe thinking, oh no, here we go, this is going to be a bad day. I want to share with you a story from when I was a head teacher. We wanted to improve reading for pleasure across the school, and we decided that we wanted to invite a picture book artist, and we were really lucky that we were able to secure Anthony Brown to come and speak at our school. Now, Anthony Brown is the author of those wonderful gorilla picture books, wonderful picture books. He's written so many. And all the way through the school, we got as many of his books as we could, and the children got really, really excited about reading his books, emulating the pictures within his books, telling stories to each other. And then the day came that Anthony Brown was going to be coming to our schools. It was a very exciting day. And Ashley, who's a little boy in year 4, came and knocked on the door of my office, and he said to me, Mrs. Peacock. I said, yes. He said, today's the day, isn't it? Today's the day that Anthony Brown's coming. And I said, yes, absolutely. And he said, well, he'd got a carrier bag with him. And in his carrier bag, he'd got loads of notes. He said, the thing is, Mrs. Peacock, I'm an author, and I would really like to have my lunch with Anthony Brown today. Can I sit with Anthony Brown and share my sandwiches with him? Because I want to share with him my stories. So I said, possibly, Ashley, I'll ask him. I'll ask Anthony Brown and see what he says. Anyway, so this celebrated author arrives in the school. He is literally like a celebrity as he comes in. Everybody is mobbing him because they're so excited, and they've done so much work around his books. I think he's a bit taken aback. And then when it came to lunchtime, I said, if you don't mind, someone's asked if they might share their lunch with you. Could Ashley come and sit with you because he's an author? And so then Ashley and Anthony Brown sat in a classroom together, and Ashley got out of his carrier bag a series of stories that he had written on packing paper that his mum had brought home from the factory. And these were all stories about Mr. Wellington Boot. And Anthony Brown sat and read them with him. And then he came and spoke to me, and he said, you know, Ashley is a really good story writer. And I was a bit embarrassed, really, because I perhaps didn't know. And certainly these stories hadn't been written in school. It wasn't something I could take all the glory for. This was something that Ashley had done at home. Anyway, we had a big bus that we were turning into a library on our playground. And I wanted Anthony Brown to be the one to come back and open the bus when we'd finished refurbishing it. This is going to be a big symbol of energy and creativity and reading at all times, including when you're on the playground. And he said to me, I'll come back and open your bus when it's finished if you publish Ashley's books. And so what we did was we contacted a local printer. This is a copy here of The Amazing Adventures of Mr. Wellington Boot. When Anthony Brown returned, we had Ashley sitting under a tree with a pile of his books doing book signings because he was the author. So this is all about the art of the possible. If you're the kind of teacher that will take children anywhere in terms of what they might achieve, then you'll have the most wonderful, wonderful career, and you'll enjoy every moment. Well, not every. Please do join the Chartered College. It's free if you're a trainee, massively reduced if you're an NQT, £1.80, I think it is a month. We've got an early career festival next week with loads of events. You can see them on the screen. Thank you for this evening. Is that quick enough, Katie? And good evening.
Absolutely. Do you know what a lovely story, and that just encapsulates exactly why teaching is the best job in the world. How many other careers could you get to witness something so special? That really is phenomenal. I think I don't know what happens with Zoom in terms of whether it will cut us off at 7:15, but I don't know if Yamina is still with us. Hi Yamina, I think you're muted at the moment.
Hi everyone.
Oh,
I made it. What am I like? Honestly, you spend 6 months on Zoom and then it just stops working for you.
Like I say, the scheduled Zoom is meant to finish at 7:45. So whether in the next few seconds it's going to completely cut you off, I have no idea, I'm afraid. Like you say, Zoom has become such a huge, important part of our lives, and yet we barely know how to work some of its intricacies. If you would like to go ahead, I'm more than happy. If people are happy to stick around for a few more minutes, and we can go back to the start, hopefully, of your slides. All of the slides will be shared with all attendees, so please don't worry if we do get cut off. All of the slides and a recording will be shared at the end of the day.
Hi everyone, I'm Yamina. Sorry for being late. Typical teacher, I'm really sorry. Hi, I'm Yamina. I work at Forest Gate Community School. I am an assistant head teacher and I am a Women-Ed London Network lead, which I'm really, really proud of actually. Next slide, please. Katie, thank you. This is how I felt when I found out that I was going to be a professional coordinating mentor last year. So this is a new role, assistant head, but actually for the last 5 years before that, I was a lead practitioner leading English and teaching and learning, and it was the best blooming job in the world, let's be honest. Alison just talked about teaching, and this is the next step. If you're going to be a type of leader, lead early careers teachers, it is honestly one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever done. I've got serious FOMO now watching the next person who's the current professional coordinating mentor do it, just sit there staring at her. But here's some tips. It's kind of the other side of the coin. What is it like to lead early careers teachers? So when I found out, sorry about the formatting, I don't know what's happened. But with regards to when I found out, I started thinking about some key questions about how we really support our early careers teachers to thrive, not survive, thrive. So what key knowledge do they need in order to understand and implement in order to become effective teachers and the next generation of leaders in our career? What specific personalized support are we as a school going to provide for our early careers teachers so that they can become effective and reflective practitioners throughout the year? How do I then, as a coordinating mentor, create the right culture and conditions to ensure that they really thrive? How can I use evidence-based research and practice to inform the professional development that I was providing as a senior leader in charge of such a huge role, an important role in the school? And how do I, as a professional coordinating mentor, really ensure that the mentors are trained to encourage our mentees to thrive in their first few years of their career? Next slide, please, Katie. Sorry about my sore throat. Promise it's not like, it's just being back. So really thinking about senior leadership and how school leaders can support mentors and early careers teachers. I think it has to start at the top, and it really, really we need to really ensure that we're doing right by our new teachers, because otherwise they will leave. We all know the statistics. I don't need to repeat it. Really thinking about the effective induction process. It starts from the moment they start. In our school, our NQTs begin in July so that they can get paid over the summer, but also it gives them time to really get to know the system and so that they're really supportive. So ensuring that they've got not just a mentor, but they've also got a buddy or a coach other than the mentor, because the mentor still does decide whether they pass or fail. And that's quite still, that accountability is quite scary. But actually having a coach, but you just had a really rubbish day, I don't know what to do in this class, and not having to worry about that. Provide them with an induction process that's going to help them. Provide them with mentors with effective mentor training. I don't think that's done enough in schools, and it's really something we've been doing a lot at our school, at Forest Gate Community School, to ensure that our mentors are developed as well as our mentees. Providing a centralized mentor meeting kind of minutes so that it focuses on subject knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge. Having a kind of program, a CPD program that's linked to the teaching evidence-based practice, and also linked to the early careers teachers and ITT framework, which we've been doing a lot over the last 2 years. We created an NQT file so that all the evidence is there in one file and they can populate as they like, as a regular feedback, but it's observable and practicable feedback, not airy-fairy feedback, as I like to call it, something that they can do immediately. They can get better faster. And I'm all about praise. At our school, we're all about praise. Provide that praise in public and provide the next steps in private for both mentors and early careers teachers. And ask early careers teachers, how are they? And then ask them again, let's have a chat, so that there is always a follow-up. You're not just saying, oh, how are you? They say they're fine, and actually they're not. It's really important that we have those follow-up conversations. Next slide, please, Katie. And then we're thinking about how mentors should support early careers teachers. I'm not going to go through this. We'll send these out, I'm sure, Katie, but really getting the mentors to understand their role. to understand that this is not a paid role, but it is such a significant role. I was so lucky, you know, I've been teaching for 11 years. In my NQT year and my Pgce year, I had the most amazing women teaching me and helping me get better, not judging me, helping me get better, because they knew what it meant to be an effective mentor. Really ensuring that our mentors are trained and supported just as much as our NQTs are and early careers teachers are is really important. Provide them with the space to reflect and get better as well. Next one, please. And provide our early careers teachers with feedback. Give them effective feedback that helps them get better, and not just feedback that's not something that they can't actually apply there and then. Really help them get better, and provide that feedback to the mentors as well to help them get better as mentors too. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. And this is just my previous mentee, last year's mentee, who I asked her to do, you know, talk about what is it that I did as your mentor and as your PCM to really help you. And she talked about a strategy that I used where we sat down together and I got her to like create a gingerbread man. And I said, I want you to think about the traits that how would you describe yourself? How would your friends and family describe you? And then on the outside, I want you to think about all the things that you'd like people at school to say about you. What are the professional attributes you'd assign to yourself? And we're going to, you know, throughout the year, we're going to work on how we can kind of combine the two so that you can be your authentic self. You don't have to be this different version. You should be able to bring your whole self to school. And she talked about the kindness, you know, the way in which she felt like my words were kind, and that positive energy and positivity as a mentor and a professional coordinating mentor is so key for your mentees. You know, making sure that we call it G'ing them up. You know, G them up, make them feel like they're doing the right things, praise them in public, support them in private. And she talked about how, you know, from this point forward, her kindness still has a huge impact on my path. You mentors are going to decide their fate. You are so important in the next stages of their career. I can't emphasize it enough. I have mentees from me, you know, saying, thank you so much. I am now doing this role, and I think that's because of you. And I say that about my mentor. So really, really thinking about how we're helping our early careers teachers to thrive. It's by starting at the top. Senior leaders need to make sure that they're emphasizing on the effective training that's provided. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Yamina. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you were able to join us in the end.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, that's no problem. Thank you. So that brings us back to our question of how are you going to be 10% braver? I'm so pleased to see tweets coming in already. I'm really looking forward to looking through the chat to see what your 10% braver pledges are. Do continue to tweet them as well. I'm loving seeing them come through. As I mentioned previously, the slides, the chat, the recording will all be sent out to all attendees. And I just want to thank everyone for sticking around. I know these women events always run over. We do like to really get into what we're talking about, and it's so nice to see people and hear people talking with such passion about what really is the best job in the world. So I want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you so much to our keynote speakers as well. And thank you everyone for sticking around. I hope you take away something really, really useful and inspiring from this session. And I look forward to welcoming you to another Women Ed event soon, I hope. Thank you everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.